here with property entrepreneur and trader Jason Harris-Cohen, and Jason purchases around 10 properties a month on average, so I thought you would be a great person to talk to sort of on behalf of landlords who are looking at properties and doing due diligence to actually understand if they are getting a discount, because the only way to understand your true discount is to actually know the true market value. So Jason, what is your process for actually determining the true market value of a property?
I think that the main thing, one of the main factors is by picking up the phone to a local estate agent or a surveyor's practice and understanding the micro location where you're valuing a property. So is there any risk? Is there a flood risk? Does the property back onto a river? Is there motorway noise is there a local, crime-ridden estate or a shooting that gone on the road? There's lots of roads in Britain where you can type in the road name and the location or the city and find quite a lot of bad press. So that's something which could affect prices as well. So, geographically, our main focus is London and the home counties or the southeast, but we will buy property throughout England. And I think, when we're valuing a property, sort of our process, if you like, is by firstly, picking up the phone to our local agents or our trusted advisors, our surveyor in each area, because we use a national asset management to help with our consultancy. We would then, go on to, we have access to Rightmove Plus, so all historic prices which are in an archive. So we actually get to see, looking at the detail of the property which sold, because ultimately when you're buying it to invest or mainly to trade, you need to know what the actual selling price is going to be. Not what an estate agent tells you to market it for. That's not right. That's not important. What's important is what you can actually sell your property for. So we try to price our properties at sort of 90 to 180 day sale prices, as a surveyor would when they're valuing a property on that basis, maybe on behalf of a commercial bank. So we're looking at what we can sell the property, sell the investment on, maybe within 90 days, ideally. So we access, historic prices on Zoopla, so the house prices sector, which is quite good. A lot of properties will give you the history of the property as well, so you can actually understand whether it is a 2 or 3 bedroom house. Rightmove Plus, we also got access to Essential Information Group, which is an excellent tool from EIG. Where you can look at historic auction data. So we actually got a sort of huge method of valuation. We will look at the auction data, we will look at our Rightmove Plus, we'll look at the Zoopla house prices, we'll look at current properties on the market. So, through the likes of Rightmove, what's been on within the last 14 days, has there been a change in house prices in a certain geographic region between the date that the property went on the market and the date it actually sold? Because, with the huge growth in some locations, mainly in the sort of the southeast, there may be a 5% increase in prices between a 6-month period. So you really need to be aware of, if it did achieve, if it was on the market at that price 6 months ago, what is today's value? So, as well as consulting with our surveyors, we will go on Google Street View, get a photograph of the property, have a look at the map, check it doesn't back onto a river, maybe even check the ground conditions, that there's no sort of occurrences of heave and landslip, which has happened in some regions as well. With what's been going on in a lot of the flooding, which has been terrible in certain parts of the country, and that's also another risk that we need to take into account. So. A huge variety of sort of areas we look at.
Yeah, because I think from a landlord perspective, landlords want to make sure that they are buying at a slight discount, because not only does it mitigate their risk, it means they've got additional equity locked in from day one, and also it will increase their rental yield if they're buying the property for less.
Well, that's it. I think that a lot of investors, if you can buy at a discount, you can then base your yield on your discounted purchase price as opposed to the value, as someone else may do if you look at a headline figure, an asking price, let's say. There can be quite a big difference if you can pay 10% less than an asking price on your yield.
And I mean, with digital tools, there's so much that the landlord can do just at their desk, as you mentioned, and we've got a thread on Property Tribes which I'll link to underneath this, which is 5 ways to assess a property's value and desirability without even leaving your home. So landlords really should take advantage advantage of the digital tools and all the extra information on the portals like Rightmove and Zoopla. There's so much data out there, isn't there?
It's unbelievable. It's even difficult for us to keep on top of actually what's being released. So, but we really need to sort of keep our fingers on the pulse, make sure we're fully aware of the software available. We also use ProMap, so Ordnance Survey Map, to actually look at the sort of aerial view, the outline of the property. But also that's a huge way for us to look at ways to enhance the property and look at ways to add value. It may be that there's a bit of land on the side. It may be that there's access from the side and a backland, so possible for maybe backland development. But it also gives us a general idea of the street scene, what else other properties have done on the road. So ProMap's another one that we do load up, and regularly use that throughout our working day.
That's a good tip. I mean, just to finish, as a professional property buyer, would you ever say to a landlord it's okay to buy a property without viewing it?
I wouldn't recommend that. I think that there's a lot of problems which you might not know about, whether it's a huge crack in the property. I think you always want to sort of vet your tenant, understand, see what sort of person they are. It's always good to have a chat with the tenant first, and also find out a bit of sort of track record from the tenant. Have they paid
What you mean
rent?
if you're buying a tenanted property?
Yeah, if you're buying a tenanted property, but if someone's buying a property without seeing it, you sort of leave yourself vulnerable to all sorts of problems, and whether that be a property defect, an issue with a tenant, an issue with the street or the road. I think you need to be as comprehensive as possible with your due diligence to avoid tripping up and making mistakes.
Yeah, and I must say that if a property looks suspiciously cheap on the portals, there will be a reason for that. And I always cite an example of a property that looked great on paper, but it was actually right next door to a lorry depot, and there were lorries driving in and out, 24 hours a day. These are the kind of things that if you don't do your due diligence, you'll get tripped up, like you said.
And even sometimes, properties backing onto supermarkets. You've got, deliveries throughout the night, 24 hours a day. You've got the continuous, the waste, increased waste, commercial waste as opposed to domestic. All these things, it may be the smell, it may be the noise. There's all sorts of problems, and you need to be aware of the sort of general area. I think one other thing that I'd really like to touch on, and for sort of general customers and all types of anyone involved in property need to be aware of, is sort of cybercrime and property fraud, which we're seeing a massive increase on. And we're also being, very careful in who we're dealing with, knowing who the vendor is, knowing who the landlord is, making sure that they are the genuine owner, because, we've actually had first-hand experience of dealing in a fraudulent property sale. So being the unfortunately actually being on the other end and losing out to property fraud. So a vendor who purported to be the seller actually wasn't. They sold a tenanted property, we wasn't able to access it. This was several years ago, but actually it's still ongoing with a claim against the purported seller's solicitors now, and they don't want to accept liability. It's cost us a substantial amount in legal fees chasing this. So Land Registry are constantly releasing articles about this, but if you are an absent landlord, you do rent your property, there are tools available with Land Registry now to actually protect that property. So maybe to put a restriction on the title, so it can't be sold without two signatures, it can't be sold without the presence of the legal owner. And I think that is something which I believe, with the increases in crime, cybercrime specifically, and the sort of more advanced technology, you do need to be aware of the risk from property fraud.